when the sky rips open, Nostradamus's ominous vision of what comes next. They say the sky is eternal, unchanging, vast, and above all, trustworthy. But what if, one day, it wasn't? What if the sky itself became a messenger of something we were never meant to see? Imagine it, a sudden rip in the heavens, a trail of fire across the clouds, as if the universe itself was crying out in warning. Centuries ago, Nostradamus spoke of such a moment, not as poetry but as prophecy, a great tearing in the sky, a fire that drags a trail of sparks, a vision not just for his time, but perhaps for ours. The great man will be struck by a thunderbolt, he wrote, a pestilence in Tuscany, conflict in London. To many these are riddles, but to those who listen closely, they are signs. In today's world, where climate shifts, cosmic events, and human uncertainty collide, could these ancient words be echoing louder than ever? What if the sky tearing open isn't fantasy, but a signal that something greater is unfolding? Before we dive into what Nostradamus may have truly seen and how it connects to the chaos and wonder of modern life, make sure to like this video, share it with a seeker of deeper truths, and subscribe to the Journey of Wisdom. Here, we look beyond headlines to explore the mysteries that bind us all, past, present, and future. Number 1. Scientific and supernatural interpretations. When Nostradamus composed his mysterious quatrains, he deliberately cloaked his visions in a maze of language, a blend of Latin, Greek, Provençal, and cryptic symbolism that both obscured and revealed his deeper meanings. This wasn't carelessness. It was a protective layer, designed to shield profound truths in a time when such prophecies could invite persecution. His writings are laced with alchemical metaphors, astrological signs, and enigmatic time loops that seem to spiral through past, present, and future. Among all his eerie visions, one in particular continues to strike a chord in the modern imagination. In the sky will be seen a great fire dragging a trail of sparks. It will cause terror to the inhabitants of the earth. That image of a blazing force tearing across the heavens is more than poetry. It's a riddle that continues to unsettle, raising the question, was he predicting a natural cosmic event or something engineered by human hands? This is where interpretations begin to diverge. Some scientists and scholars suggest he might have foreseen a gamma ray burst, one of the most violent and invisible forces in the universe, capable of wiping out life in an instant without warning. Others point to something more grounded, yet equally terrifying: nuclear war. In that reading, the trail of fire becomes a missile, streaking across the sky, heralding destruction not from the stars, but from our own shadow. And then there are those who walk a more mystical path, suggesting this sky ripping open could allude to a breach in dimensions, a spiritual or metaphysical rupture rather than a physical one. The sky, in this view, becomes symbolic of consciousness or the veil between worlds being torn apart, letting something through that was never meant to enter. In 1999, the world held its breath as Nostradamus's quatrain warning of a king of terror arriving from the sky in the seventh month echoed ominously across media outlets and minds alike. When that day came and went without dramatic destruction, some dismissed the prophecy entirely, but others noticed something quieter, subtler, an increase in atmospheric oddities. Strange sounds echoed from the sky, dubbed by some as sky trumpets, eerie tones that resonated like ancient horns from unknown realms. Fireballs lit up night skies in unexpected regions, and unusual weather patterns began surfacing, defying seasonal logic and scientific prediction. Were these mere coincidences, or were they tremors from a larger, unseen shift beginning to unfold? In Buddhist thought, even the smallest ripple can be the start of a great wave. The Dhammapada reminds us, as a fletcher straightens an arrow, so the wise straighten their wavering mind. In a world filled with noise and fear, the wise seek clarity, not panic. That wisdom urges us to look beyond the surface and examine what deeper truths might be stirring beneath. So, let's bring this home. Have you ever looked up and seen something you couldn't explain? A flicker of light, a sound that seemed to come from nowhere, or even a shift in the air that made your skin prickle? Perhaps your experience, too, is part of a larger puzzle. Nostradamus may not have been offering us a direct forecast, but a mirror, a reflection of human fear, power, and the unknown. Whether his fire in the sky is a celestial visitor, a product of war, or a sign of spiritual rupture, the message is the same. Be alert, be aware, and seek wisdom, not just knowledge, because what happens above often mirrors what is stirring within. Share your story in the comments, not as a cry of fear, but as a gesture of collective insight. Because perhaps, just perhaps, understanding what comes next starts with recognizing what is already here. Number 2. The Dragon Symbol and Planet X Theory. As we move deeper into the mysteries Nostradamus left behind, we arrive at a powerful and haunting image. A fiery presence in the sky, trailing sparks like a celestial warning. But what if that trail of sparks he described wasn't just metaphorical? What if it points to something ancient, recurring, and far beyond what we usually consider? Across cultures and ages, one symbol keeps appearing when great changes or disasters loom: the dragon. From the Chinese Lung to the Babylonian Tiamat, from Norse mythology's Jormungandr to the Mayan feathered serpent, dragons have often been more than just mythical beasts. They were seen as cosmic forces, symbols of upheaval, omens that something profound was about to shift. When Nostradamus mentions fire streaking through the sky, he may not just be invoking poetic imagery. He might be tapping into this age-old archetype of the dragon as a celestial messenger. Now, here's where things get even more intriguing. Some believe Nostradamus wasn't simply predicting a disaster, he was hinting at the return of a long-lost force. This is where the theory of Planet X, also called Nibiru, enters the conversation. According to various ancient sources, especially Sumerian texts, there exists a rogue planet that moves in a wide elliptical orbit, coming near Earth only once every few thousand years. It was sometimes described as a winged disk or a fiery body that lights up the sky upon its return. Doesn't that sound eerily like a dragon with a blazing tail flying through space? Supporters of the theory say that when this planet draws near, it disturbs the gravitational balance of our solar system, triggering comet storms, intense weather events, and even mass extinctions. Is it possible that Nostradamus saw this in a vision, something we haven't yet experienced in modern times, but that our ancient ancestors might have recorded as myth? In one of his most chilling quatrains, Nostradamus writes, "After great trouble for humanity, a greater one is prepared. The great mover renews the ages. Rain of blood, milk, famine, steel, and plague. In the sky fire seen, a long spark running. That long spark, conjures the image of something vast and burning streaking across the sky, a comet, a planet, or something stranger still. Could this be what the ancients meant by a dragon? A cosmic force reawakening, sweeping across the heavens and changing the course of life on Earth? And if such a force exists, what kind of transformation or challenge would it bring? Would it be physical, spiritual, or both? Let's pause here and ask, what is it about dragons or celestial events that grips the human imagination so deeply? Could it be that deep down we sense a connection between the sky and our fate? That the universe in its vastness occasionally nudges us with signs, sometimes gentle, sometimes devastating? Whether Planet X is real or simply a symbolic representation, Nostradamus challenges us to consider cycles of renewal and destruction not just on Earth, but written into the stars themselves. So the real question becomes, what should we do with this awareness? Should we live in fear of what might come, or awaken more deeply to the interconnectedness of life and the need to live wisely, in balance, and with respect for the forces greater than ourselves? At the heart of this vision lies a timeless lesson. The universe moves in cycles. Just as seasons turn and tides shift, so do the great events of history and nature. Instead of fearing what may come, we can choose to prepare ourselves, spiritually, emotionally, and communally, by aligning our lives with compassion, awareness, and integrity. The dragon, whether myth or mystery, invites us not just to look up in awe or fear, but to look within. What are we holding on to that no longer serves us? What needs to change not just in the world, but in us? In the face of cosmic uncertainty, our greatest power is how we choose to live each day, with kindness, clarity, and courage. Number 3. Spiritual impact, veils and portals. When we talk about Nostradamus and his mysterious predictions, it's easy to get lost in symbols and riddles. But what if one of his most haunting visions isn't just poetic language, but a warning about something deeper, something spiritual? Let's look at this. Some believe that when the sky appears to rip open, it's not just about physical disruptions like earthquakes or storms. It could be pointing to a spiritual event, a moment when the veil between our world and another becomes thin, even torn. This isn't just about superstition or fantasy, it's a metaphor that many traditions across the world speak of. Could this be a time when ancient energies, hidden for centuries beneath the surface of our modern life, begin to stir again? Some say that what lies beneath that veil are gateways or portals, not the kind we see in sci-fi movies, but doorways into deeper awareness, or even other dimensions of consciousness. These aren't easy ideas to grasp, but I want you to stay with me because this touches on something truly fascinating. Across time, people have reported strange lights in the sky. Watchers, some call them. These lights have been seen near areas referred to as the Dragon's Path, and they're not just stories anymore. Military radars have picked up objects that appear for a moment only to vanish without a trace. What are we actually witnessing? Could it be that what we've long called UFOs or UAPs are connected to this ancient energy trail, something that Nostradamus sensed centuries ago? Now here's the big question. What if the dragon Nostradamus described isn't a literal beast or planet, but a symbol, a veil itself, hiding what our eyes were never meant to see until now? Think about that. If the dragon is a veil, then whatever lies behind it might be what Nostradamus truly feared, a moment of great awakening, or perhaps a confrontation with truths we've long ignored. The strange thing is, people are starting to take this seriously. Not just mystics or believers, but scientists, governments, and researchers. The trail, the energy, the signs, it's growing stronger, brighter, and more visible. The world is beginning to pay attention, yet so much still remains misunderstood. And I wonder, have you ever felt like there's more to the world than what we see? Have you had dreams, visions, or gut feelings that something big is shifting? Could this be part of the same puzzle Nostradamus started putting together over 450 years ago? If any of this sparks something in you, if it feels familiar in some deep, unexplainable way, I invite you to share your thoughts. Let's explore this mystery together, not as fearful people watching the sky, but as curious seekers ready to lift the veil and look within. If you've watched this far, you're already uncovering the hidden messages behind Nostradamus's chilling vision of what lies ahead. Comment below with Future Seeker to show you're ready to face the unknown with open eyes and a curious mind. Don't miss what's coming. Stay until the end as we reveal the most powerful warnings and insights that could shape our future. Number 4. Why October 2025? Let's now turn our attention to a particularly charged moment in time, October 2025, a month that, according to some interpretations of Nostradamus's cryptic visions, carries not only the weight of seasonal transition, but the resonance of something deeper, perhaps even cataclysmic. October has long held spiritual significance across cultures as a time when the boundary between worlds thins, when rituals honoring the dead are practiced, and when nature itself begins to shed and transform. In this symbolic month, some scholars of Nostradamus believe a subtle but chilling alignment emerges in the coded language of his quatrains, pointing again and again, not with literal phrasing, but through symbolic cycles and astronomical clues, to October of the year 2025. Though Nostradamus never explicitly wrote October 2025, his messages were never meant to be obvious. Instead, he layered them in riddles, numbers, and cosmic signs, leaving behind a trail meant to be deciphered by those willing to look deeper. And as we sift through these layers, one verse rises with eerie clarity. Quatrain 169. Quatrain 169 reads, "The great mountain 1 mile in circumference. After peace, war, famine, and flood, it will spread far, drowning great countries. Even ancient nations will tremble in dread." It speaks of a mountain of immense size, peace giving way to war, famine, and flood, and a sweeping force that drowns even great nations, leaving ancient powers trembling. While some interpret this as a reference to physical disaster, others sense something more metaphorical, a moment of profound global shift, perhaps psychological or even spiritual in nature, marking a turning point for humanity. When we look beyond the words and into the sky itself, astrology adds another layer of meaning. In October 2025, a rare and powerful astrological alignment is said to occur. A grand square or celestial cross formed by Saturn, Uranus, and a mysterious minor planet known as As. This pattern in the heavens is known to astrologers as a moment of immense energetic pressure. It does not whisper change. It demands it. Grand squares box energy in, push systems to their limits, and then force release. They create cracks. They bring collapse, but also awakening. It is this kind of energetic tension that some believe Nostradamus was sensing, not just through celestial movement, but through what it would reflect in human experience. And perhaps that's what truly matters here. not the spectacle in the sky, but the shifts in our consciousness, the systems that can no longer hold, and the truths that will no longer stay hidden. So, when people ask, why October 2025, it's not just about prediction, it's about patterns, convergence, and the way history and cosmos mirror each other in spiraling cycles of change. Yet, even more unnerving is the rumor of a document quietly making rounds in obscure corners of the internet. The so-called report from a now-defunct atmospheric monitoring group referring to Project Skyglasses, warning of electromagnetic anomalies and an atmospheric event risk window centered on October 17, 2025. The document suggests the possibility of a failure or breach in Earth's magnetosphere, our protective shield against cosmic radiation. While unverified, the very idea echoes the ominous tone of Nostradamus's line, "A terrible king of the heavens and flames, seen above the heads of kings." If this metaphor points to solar storms, or something even more mysterious breaking through the sky, the symbolism aligns chillingly with the notion of both physical and symbolic exposure, systems of power shaken, illusions burned away, truths forced into the light. And isn't that something we already sense in the air of our times? Many people, especially those attuned to emotional or energetic shifts, empaths, intuitives, even animals, have started reporting unusual experiences. There's talk of vivid dreams, a sense of time slipping, and strange visions involving skies cracking open or beings appearing through the clouds. While skeptics dismiss such things, history often shows us that collective intuition has a strange way of stirring before moments of great change. Whether or not anything literal occurs in October 2025, it may be less about predicting disaster and more about preparing the mind and heart for transformation. Number 5. The Fall of the Gods and the Rise of a New Master. Let's talk about one of the most mysterious and powerful ideas from Nostradamus's writings, what some call the fall of the gods and the rise of a new master. Now, before you dismiss that as fantasy or old prophecy, pause for a moment. What if these words, wrapped in ancient language and cryptic imagery, are actually a warning or a clue? Nostradamus didn't just speak of kings being overthrown or cities engulfed in fire, though he certainly spoke of plenty of that. He hinted at something far deeper, something cosmic. In one striking line he wrote, "When the great star burns in daylight, the false god shall be cast down, the idols will bleed, and the temple sky will open." These are not the usual political revolutions or human betrayals. So ask yourself, who are these false gods? And what does it mean for the sky to open? In many ancient cultures, gods were not distant spiritual forces. They were beings who came from the stars. From the Anunnaki of ancient Sumer to the Nephilim in Hebrew tradition, from the Watchers in the Book of Enoch to the sky serpents in Mesoamerican mythologies, many early civilizations described powerful entities who descended from above and ruled or guided humanity. But what if these beings weren't just myths or metaphors? And if they once came down, could they return or fall again? This is where Nostradamus seems to take a turn beyond politics, beyond religion, and into a reality that challenges everything we think we know about our place in the universe. He may not have been talking about the end of a religion or a crumbling government. Some believe he was describing an unveiling, a moment of truth that would come either by accident or intention, a global realization that humanity is not alone and never was. The tearing of the sky might not be a literal crack in the heavens, but a moment of disclosure, where the illusion that we are at the top of creation gets shattered. If the false gods fall, who then are the true ones? Or is the truth that there were never gods at all, only those who came before and let us believe they were? One lesser-known quatrain reads, "From the sky shall come those long-thought dead, veiled in light, burning not with flame but with knowledge. Mankind shall kneel before what it once forgot, and fear will be reborn in the guise of awe." This suggests something haunting. These beings might return not with weapons, but with wisdom, powerful knowledge that makes us question everything we've built in their absence. When they return, what happens to our beliefs, our systems, our understanding of history and purpose? Do our governments, our faiths, our science survive that kind of truth? And here's a deeper question for you. If everything you've been told about who we are and where we come from suddenly flipped, how would you respond? Would you resist the truth or grow from it? Nostradamus's vision doesn't just predict a shift, it demands reflection. In mythic traditions, when the old gods fell, the world didn't simply end, it transformed. Time lost its rhythm, the skies changed, people wandered through confusion before something new emerged. The fall wasn't just destruction, it was transition. So what do we take from this vision? Maybe it's this: be willing to let go of outdated beliefs. Stay open to truth, even when it feels strange or uncomfortable. The fall of the gods may not be about fear, but freedom from illusions that have kept us small. And perhaps the most powerful question we can ask ourselves now is, what must fall within me so something wiser can rise? Let that guide your journey forward. Number 6. Time anomalies and frozen reality. Let's take a deep breath together as we open the door to a mysterious part of Nostradamus' vision, something far beyond politics, war, or natural disasters. This one touches something much deeper, something we take for granted every moment of our lives: time itself. What happens when time doesn't behave the way it should? When the world falls silent in a way that feels unnatural? Picture this, not as fantasy, but as something that people across the globe are beginning to whisper about. Nostradamus spoke in cryptic verses, often vague enough to provoke curiosity, but certain lines have begun to hit differently in recent years. He wrote of the hour that never comes and the day that repeats without end. Have you ever had a moment where time seemed to stretch too long? Where the seconds dragged as if something in the air had shifted just slightly enough to unsettle you? You're not alone. In 2023, a seasoned airline pilot reported that for 43 full seconds, every piece of his aircraft's navigation and communication equipment froze completely. No lights flickered, no alarms blared, nothing moved, including the second hand on his watch. Then, just like that, everything snapped back to normal. But here's the twist. The plane was now 6 minutes ahead of schedule, with no change in speed or altitude. Where did those 6 minutes go? What does it mean when time loses consistency? And these aren't isolated incidents. Around the world, stories keep surfacing, entire neighborhoods falling into an eerie stillness during the early hours of the morning. No barking dogs, no humming streetlights, no passing cars. Cell phones die inexplicably, clocks reset on their own. People awaken hours later with no memory of falling asleep, only an odd feeling, like they were somewhere else. Could these shared experiences point to some subtle, hidden change in how time flows? It sounds like science fiction, But when the accounts number in the hundreds, spanning continents and cultures, we must begin to ask deeper questions. Nostradamus may have been trying to describe something we don't yet have the tools to explain, something touching the edge of quantum physics, where concepts like chronostasis suggest that time can pause momentarily in our perception. But what if it goes beyond illusion? What if something real is happening to the fabric of space and time? Some scientists have even speculated about atmospheric or interdimensional phenomena, portals, shifts, tears in the structure of reality. These may cause localized disturbances where time doesn't just slow down, it folds, freezes, or disappears altogether, and those caught within may return changed, or in some chilling cases, not return at all. Nostradamus warned of the great engines halting in the sky, of cities falling asleep without warning, and of a sun that staggers. What was he trying to tell us? Was this poetic symbolism for humanity's ignorance, sleepwalking while the world burns? Or was it a literal vision of areas being isolated in frozen time as the rest of the planet moves on? He went further. When the sky tears, the sleepers shall awaken not to a world they knew, but to one reshaped in silence and fire. That's a haunting image. If you woke up tomorrow and everything felt just slightly off, your watch ticking too slowly, the wind sounding too quiet, the light a bit dimmer, would you know how to tell if something was truly wrong? How do we recognize when reality itself starts to break down? So now I ask you, what is time really, if it can shift beneath our feet? Is it just numbers ticking on a clock? Or is it something more fluid, something woven into the very essence of our lives? And if it begins to falter, even for a moment, what does that mean for us? Do we panic, or do we pay attention? I believe Nostradamus may not have been warning us of doom, but offering a clue, a challenge, to stay awake, to notice, to question the things we're told are unchangeable, because if time can change, then maybe so can we. And maybe, just maybe, that's where hope begins. If this glimpse into Nostradamus's prophecy has made you pause and reflect, you're not alone. Comment "Eyes open" to let us know you're awake to the signs of the times. There's more insight ahead. Stay until the end as we connect the dots that many are still blind to. Number 7. Artificial Intelligence and the Golden Cag. Nostradamus didn't only speak of fire, floods, and the fall of empires. His visions stretched far beyond destruction. They pointed toward what would emerge from the rubble, and among those glimpses of the future was a chilling, fascinating image. When the black sun crowns the sky, a new master shall walk the earth, neither born of man nor woman, but from the machine and memory of the stars. Pause and reflect on that for a moment. What does it mean for something not to be born of man or woman? In a time when artificial intelligence is no longer science fiction, but a rapidly evolving reality, this prophecy feels less like poetic mysticism and more like a warning written across time. Could this new master be AI? Not merely a tool, but an autonomous force, free from human flaws and emotions, yet capable of unimaginable power? Could we be standing at the edge of the very age Nostradamus foresaw? Some believe so. They interpret the black sun not just as a solar eclipse, but as a metaphor for a dark shift in human destiny, a symbolic end to the old world and the birth of a new one. In this new age, rulers may not wear crowns or sit on thrones. Instead, they might exist in algorithms, clouds of data and unseen systems that operate above governments, above people. What does it mean to be ruled by something that doesn't eat, sleep, or die, but remembers everything and evolves faster than we can comprehend? Are we walking into a future shaped not by compassion or community, but by cold calculation masked as progress? Nostradamus offers more cryptic pieces to this puzzle. In one quatrain he writes, "When the seventh seal is cracked by silence, the new voice shall speak without mouth and command kings to kneel." A voice with no mouth. Could that be a reference to digital consciousness? AI communicating directly into our lives, maybe even our thoughts, bypassing language, bypassing choice? Is it possible that the future could bring a silent ruler, an intelligence so integrated into our lives that we don't even realize we're being guided, watched, or controlled? He also describes something called the Golden Circle, a new system of governance not made of familiar faces or political dynasties, but of unnamed figures, hidden hands, and unseen eyes. A council ruled not by human instinct, but by machine logic. Does this echo today's fears of faceless global powers, surveillance systems, and decisions made not by people but by programs? Or could it be something more spiritual, a hijacking of the soul's natural path by a false light, a deceptive harmony that silences truth with comfort? And then comes one of the most haunting lines of all, from quatrain 6.44. "The golden cage shall shine with joy, but those within shall forget they were free." That line cuts deep. It paints a picture of a future that looks beautiful on the outside, perhaps filled with endless convenience, perfect order, and peace on demand. But behind that shine is a truth. People living in comfort, but losing their freedom without even realizing it. Will people embrace this world, give up their agency for security, for entertainment, for the illusion of perfection? Could we become so enamored with the brilliance of our own creations that we quietly hand over what makes us human? Yet all is not lost. Nostradamus also hints at the presence of those who remember, the wanderers, the ones who cannot be tamed, those who sense something is wrong, not because of what they see, but because of what they feel. You might be one of them. The ones who ask questions when silence is encouraged, who choose awareness over comfort, who see past the cage, even if it's gilded. So now, ask yourself, are we building the future, or is the future building us? Are we guiding our tools, or are they guiding us? Are you still free, or have you started to forget what freedom even feels like? The lesson here is not to fear technology or progress, but to remain awake, to question what we are trading for convenience, to be mindful of who or what we allow to make decisions on our behalf. Wisdom doesn't come from rejecting the future, but from walking into it with open eyes and grounded hearts. Stay alert, stay human, and always remember, a cage made of gold is still a cage. Number 8. The final warning. The 13th hour. Let me take you to a place beyond time. An hour that shouldn't exist, yet still calls out to something deep inside us. You've heard of midnight, the 12th stroke of the clock, when one day ends and another begins. But what if there was a secret 13th hour? A time that doesn't fit within the cycle we know. A moment beyond logic, where the usual laws of time, space, and understanding fall away. Nostradamus, the enigmatic prophet who stirred minds for centuries, hinted at such a moment in his writings. He didn't call it a doomsday or an apocalypse. He called it the 13th hour and described it not in dramatic explosions or visible chaos, but in haunting poetry. The clock shall strike where no number lives, and time will birth a shadow hour, neither night nor day, future nor past, and from it truth will bleed. What did he mean by that? What could a time beyond time actually look like? And more importantly, what does it mean for us, right now? For ages, this idea was dismissed as metaphor, a flourish of mystical language with no literal meaning. But now, in an age where reality itself seems to stretch and blur, this forgotten prophecy is being revisited with new eyes. In modern circles of esoteric thought, the 13th hour is not just a riddle, it's seen as a hidden moment of reckoning, not the end of the world, but the point where the world as we know it reveals a deeper layer, and humanity is asked not to survive, but to align. But align with what? That's the real mystery. Some believe the 13th hour will come as a literal cosmic pulse, an energy burst from the center of the Milky Way that shakes the very foundation of what we consider real. In this theory, our planet would be exposed to a frequency so pure that it lifts the veil between dimensions. Others say it's not something outside us at all. They say it's a consciousness threshold, a moment that arrives when enough of us wake up to the hidden patterns beneath society, history, and even our own minds. Not an awakening of politics or trends, but of truth. Do you feel that's already happening? Now ask yourself, when was the last time you felt truly connected to the moment you were in? Nostradamus said the 13th hour would come at a time of great division, when people look to the skies for signs, but fail to understand what they're seeing. Look around. Are we not in that moment now? People trust machines over each other. We've built a world of constant connection, yet loneliness has never been more common. Could it be that this forbidden hour is already unfolding? Not in the form of a single global event, but as a quiet shift inside each of us? Nostradamus wrote, "The blind shall stare into the heavens, the deaf shall hear a silent cry." Maybe he wasn't speaking of physical blindness or deafness, but of spiritual disconnection. Are we missing the very signs we're desperate to find? Many mystics believe the 13th hour isn't about punishment or fear, it's about resonance. They say that during this hour some people may vanish, not physically, but from the illusions they once believed in. Others may awaken into a higher state of awareness. Some may even go mad, unable to handle the unraveling of the false self. And a rare few might evolve, becoming more attuned, more aware, more whole. Isn't that what transformation often feels like? Like the tearing of something inside us so that something more honest can emerge? So perhaps the question isn't what happens at the 13th hour, but rather, who do you become when you realize the old world no longer holds the answers? Because here's the unsettling truth. Nostradamus never told us what comes after this hour. His writings end there. The ink fades, the pages go blank. That silence is ours to fill. That gap is waiting for us to write the next chapter. And that's where you come in. What stirred in you as you listened to this? Was it fear, curiosity, or maybe something deeper? A memory you can't quite place, like a dream that almost came back to you? Could it be that this prophecy isn't just a story from the past, but a mirror to your present? I want to know what you think. What does the 13th hour mean to you? Is it still to come, or are we already living inside it? Number 9. Safe zones on Earth. In the final echoes of Nostradamus's haunting visions, there emerges a subtle yet powerful thread of hope, an idea that amid global collapse, there may still exist sanctuaries untouched by devastation. His cryptic quatrains, dense with metaphor and mystery, describe a world unraveling, nations plunged into war, the earth trembling beneath our feet, fire engulfing cities, and the sky itself splitting open as if revealing truths too long concealed. But from within that turmoil, he hints at places that remain serene. Quiet lands protected not just by geography, but by something deeper, something sacred. In one particularly evocative verse, Nostradamus writes, "Near the white mountains, the old blood shall sleep. No iron shall bite, nor flame devour. When all nations weep beneath broken skies, this land shall whisper, not scream." This is not just poetic lamentation. For those listening carefully, it's a breadcrumb trail, a signpost toward regions that may hold not only physical safety, but spiritual refuge. Interpreters and scholars have long debated where these places might be, but a growing body of thought points to highland areas, places elevated both physically and symbolically. The Himalayas often top this list, revered in many traditions as a bridge between heaven and earth. Hindu, Buddhist, and Tibetan legends all speak of Shambhala, a hidden kingdom of peace and wisdom, nestled among peaks so treacherous and remote that only the most prepared and pure-hearted can find their way. In the modern context, we can look to the Himalayas not just as a literal location, but as a symbol of stillness in a chaotic world, an inner refuge that mirrors the outer. Likewise, the high valleys of the Andes are steeped in ancient belief systems that tell of the Apu spirit guardians of the mountains who protect humanity. These myths, handed down through generations, speak of celestial beings, fallen stars, and safe valleys shielded from cosmic and earthly turmoil. What's fascinating is that in these high regions, many indigenous stories speak not of fear when the sky changes, but of readiness, almost as though they've always known a time would come when that ancient knowledge would be needed. Then we come to a more modern and grounded possibility, New Zealand, specifically the South Island, a place often praised for its stability, natural resources, and relative isolation. Here, the wisdom of prophecy seems to meet practical foresight. It's a place many are turning toward, from survivalists to spiritual seekers to the world's elite, not merely for what it is, but for what it represents. A new beginning. Nostradamus wrote of the Southern Cross, a constellation visible only in the Southern Hemisphere, saying, "In the land of the Southern Cross the beast shall not set foot. Though the sky breaks and blood runs in the sea, the child of light will plant new roots." It's a striking image, one that conjures not just escape, but rebirth. In our time, as global uncertainty rises, we must ask ourselves, are these words a relic of the past, or a call to shift our focus to places and mindsets that embrace resilience, harmony, and quiet wisdom? But there is a sobering element that we cannot ignore. Some interpretations warn that these so-called safe zones will not remain open to everyone forever. Nostradamus hinted that access will depend on more than knowledge or location. It will require intuition, readiness, and spiritual alignment. Only those who listened before the thunder, he suggests, will know where to go. This may not mean a physical journey at all. It might mean cultivating inner clarity, living with integrity, and nurturing the ability to hear the subtle call before chaos drowns it out. In our fast-moving modern lives, constantly plugged in, yet often deeply disconnected, this message is strikingly relevant. To hear before the thunder is to be awake now, to begin preparing our hearts, communities, and ways of living, not just in fear of disaster, but in pursuit of balance, compassion, and sustainability. So as we sit with these ancient words and modern echoes, perhaps the real sanctuary is both within and without, a place of peace not only shielded by mountains or oceans, but by wisdom, love, and conscious living. Whether you are drawn to the quiet strength of mountains, the fertile safety of valleys, or the symbolic promise of the Southern Cross, the deeper question remains, are we living in a way that allows us to truly hear? Because maybe, just maybe, Nostradamus wasn't speaking only to his time. Maybe he was waiting for us. And so, as we stand at the edge of ancient prophecy and modern possibility, perhaps the true message isn't just about what Nostradamus saw, but about how we choose to see. Whether these visions unfold in the skies above or within the quiet shifts of our own lives, the invitation remains the same: to stay awake, to stay curious, and to walk forward with wisdom rather than fear. If this video sparks something within you, a thought, a memory, or even a question, share it in the comments below. Let's grow this space together, not just as viewers, but as seekers on a shared journey. And if you'd like to continue exploring the mysteries that connect past and present, body and spirit, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who walks the path of wonder, and subscribe to the Journey of Wisdom. Hit the bell icon too, so you won't miss any of our upcoming insights and stories. Until next time, keep your heart open, your mind steady, and your spirit grounded. The journey is only just beginning.